Hey guys, Brody here. Today we're going to be talking about hooks in React, what hooks are and how you can use hooks. And we're going to build out some basic functionality in our app here. And hopefully that'll demonstrate hooks to you so that you can learn from this and build your own applications using hooks. So start off, what are hooks? Hooks is the new API for React 16.8 that gives us the ability to write simplified applications, more robust applications a lot faster, and gives us the same functionality that we had in previous iterations of React, but a lot easier. So to give you an example of some hooks, hooks gives us the ability to set state. We have the ability to do side effect type stuff like HTTP requests using useEffect. We have JSX reference hooks like useRef. We have reducer hooks like useReducer, and you can create your own hooks as well. And I'll have the hooks API right here linked in the description below for you to check that out. But to get started on our application, what we're going to do is we're going to hook up this simple to-do app. But what we're going to do is we're going to hook up the to-do app to that where you type in a to-do, it should add it to a list, and then you can delete that to-do. So nothing too crazy for this video, but this will be a multi-part series. And as the videos continue, we're going to get more and more in depth into hooks. And probably the final video we do will be like building a to-do app from scratch, or doing something more complex, or writing your own custom hook, something like that. So stay tuned for that. To switch over to our project, what we're going to be doing, I have some files built out for you guys already, and I'll have this in the description below as well, so you can clone that and play around with things yourself. I have an app.js file here, which is just a functional component, just rendering some JSX, nothing crazy. Here are the two components that matter, our to-do input and our to-do list. Our to-do input is just an input component with a form around it, and then we have an input itself. We have a to-do item. My battery's almost dead, so I'm going to try to finish this video before then. But we have a to-do item, which is just which contains the JSX for the to-do itself. We have our to-do list, which has the unordered list with the mapping logic to map the to-do to a list item. So yeah, that's it. Pretty simple. So to get started here, what we need to do is we need to create our base data structure for holding these to-dos itself. Right now we have nothing, and we're going to use an array for that. So to get started, we're going to input the first hook from React, and it's going to be called useState. And I'm going to restructure that because I'm OCD. So useState is our state containing hook. I guess you can say a state updating hook. And you can have a bunch of different set states or use states inside of your app or your component. You can have 5 in here, for example, each one containing a new piece of state. So what useState does is it returns a tuple, so a data structure containing 2 values. One value is the item itself. The next value is the updater for our to-do piece of state, in our case, the list of to-dos. So we're going to say const to-dos, and then update to-do, or no, we'll call it add to-do, and we'll invoke useState here. And the first argument, the initial argument that's passed to useState, is the default state or the initial state. And for right now, we'll just keep it an empty array. Let's save this quick and make sure nothing breaks. And that seems to be good. So our to-dos will be passed to our to-do list here. Right now it's an empty array, but we're going to go ahead and pass that in. And to show you what it looks like to have this default state, I'm going to create just one of these objects in here. And I will call the name of this to-do. I'll say go to store or something. And if I save this to-dos array should contain one object, and it should map it out to a list item. And it does. So here's our go to store. So if I hit X here, eventually it'll delete the to-do from our list, which is what we're going to hook up in a second. So this kind of demonstrates what it looks like to have our default state with useState hook. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of that and just keep it an empty array. We're going to next switch into our to-do input, and this is where it gets kind of interesting. So we want to hook up the ability for us to type in the input and then add a to-do to that list that we just created. So we're going to, once again, import useState. And the value for our input is going to be a string. So we're just going to call this input value. And remember, like I said, the second value in that data structure that's returned from useState is the updater for our state. So we're going to say update input value. And we'll say useState. And the default value is going to be an empty string. And I'll demonstrate that for you one more time. So right now, there's no input value, so this input is not controlled, but we're going to control that with this state. So we're going to do value equals input value, which right now is going to be an empty string. But what I can do is, to demonstrate this default state one more time, I can say hello, and the default is now hello. But I can type and nothing happens because this is static. It's not updating with this handler. I'm going to get my charger quick. I'll be right back. All right, sorry about that. So right now, this value is static, but we're going to update it using this handler right here. So let's go ahead and set up this onChange, which is currently a no-op. We're going to create a handler below called handle input change. It's going to take in an event, which we're going to use to take the current text value of that input, and we're going to pass it into this state updater. So we're going to do event.target.value because that's the current value in the input. And it's going to update this input value. So let's replace that no-op with our new handle input change, save that. So now I can see that it's updating. And I'm going to make this an empty string again. Okay, cool. So we have some controlled state here in our input using like 2 lines of code. So you can already see this is going to be super simple to do. And now what we want to do is we want to hook up this onSubmit handler so that whenever we type some stuff and add it to our to-do list, it should submit properly, prevent default, and all that good stuff, and add it to our to-dos array. So let's pass in a callback or a prop to this to-do component called onSubmit, and we're going to create that up here. So let's name this handle submit. It's going to take in a to-do. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass it to our add to-do handler, which is going to add that to-do to our current list of to-dos. And to do that, I'm saying to-do a lot. To do that, we're going to spread the previous to-dos in here because for every one that's added to our list, we want to maintain the previous values in that array. And we're just going to pass in the to-do here. Let me save, just make sure nothing's broken. So I'm going to say onSubmit, this prop onSubmit is going to be passed to to-do input, and it's going to be equal to our handler, which will take in a to-do, pass that to a new array, which will be added to our list of to-dos here, or it will replace the list of to-dos because everything in React is immutable. So to-do input receives this onSubmit, which we're going to use right now. So let's say onSubmit here. And we're going to wrap this onSubmit with a function that prevents default for us. So let's name this const handle submit. We're going to take this event object that's going to be given to us via this handler or this listener. And then we're going to do event.prevent default so that whenever we submit the form, it doesn't refresh. And then we're going to call this onSubmit that we're passing in. We're going to pass in the name, which is going to be equal to the current input value, because as we type, we want this value to be the name of our input. And then we need an ID for this, which you would have a unique ID, which would be like a UID or something. But for right now, I'm just going to use Lodash unique ID. Shout out to Lodash. And then once this is submitted, I'm going to reset this input value to be an empty string, just for user experience purposes. So given this logic, this should work. So I can take this new handler that we created and pass it to the form here. So what's going to happen is we'll type some stuff in here. The value for the input is going to update right here because of this handler. It's going to update this value. We're going to submit the form. This onSubmit handler is going to be called. It's going to pass the event to it. We're going to prevent default so it doesn't refresh the page. We're going to call the onSubmit that we're passing in from the app.js file, which is right here. We're going to pass in this to-do object. It's going to take that to-do object here, spread the previous to-dos into a new array, and then append that new to-do to the end. And everything should work great. So let's save this. Type go to store, enter, and then here is our to-do. Go to gym, go walk dog, contemplate life. Okay, so it's working properly. So now what we're going to do is we're going to hook up the ability to delete a to-do. So this is going to happen in our to-do list, in our to-do item. So if we go back to our to-do item, we have an on-click for this little X button on the right, which does nothing, but we're going to hook that up so that it deletes the to-do. So let me walk through that here. So we're going to add a new handler here called handle delete to do, make it nice and descriptive. This is going to take in an ID. We're going to return, hear me out, we're going to return a function that is going to call low-filter, and we're going to filter our to-dos and get rid of the one that matches this ID. And we're going to do that by saying, let me just drop that to a new line. We're going to return to do that ID is not equal to ID. So one more time, we're going to pass in our ID. We're going to return a function. This is going to actually receive our event. I like currying stuff so that I don't have to test the handler as much. I don't have to pass like an anonymous function to it, like, oh, on change equals takes in the event and then calls whatever handle something. I don't like doing that. It's kind of gross. So I'm currying it for this purpose. And then what this is going to do is it's going to filter our current to-do list and then check for any to-do that does not match this ID, and it's going to return a new data set pretty much. But what we're going to do is we're going to have to store this value and then pass whatever new value is returned by this, like a new array, and we're going to pass that into add to do here. So let's go ahead and store that in a variable. So we'll call that updated, or no, we'll call it filtered to-dos. And now we're going to call add to do, pass in our new to do array, which is going to be our filtered to do list. And that should work. So let's pass this to our to do list. We're going to call this on delete to do. And let's go into our to do list on delete to do. We're going to pull that off of props. Go into our to-do item here, and now we'll just feed this down the prop chain on delete to do. And let's hook up this delete button, destroy class button. And remember, like I said earlier, this is going to take in the ID of the to-do. So we're going to pass an ID here, which is going to be given to us via props as well, since our to-do list is spreading in all the values from the current to-do. So back in our to-do input, we're submitting it with a name and ID. So this to-do should contain a name and ID, which will be spread in via props. So now in our to-do item, I have name and ID. I'm calling this on delete to do function. So it's going to return us a new function here, a curried function. And then that function that's returned will then be invoked via click. So let's save this, refresh, and we're going to add a new to-do. So go to store, and if I click on this, it should delete. So let's try it out. Boom, there we go. So let's add a few. Hello, go to store, go say hi to mom, and then go for run. I don't want to go for a run, so I'm going to delete that one. And I don't want to go to the store, so I'm just going to say hi to mom today. So yeah, I mean, this is pretty much the basics of hooks. I know we only used one hook today. We used use state, but given this logic that we added, adding the ability to add a to do and delete a to do with like what is it, like 5 lines of code that we added? Okay, we added a couple. We added like 10 lines of code. But as you can see, this is super simple to do. And in our next video, we will have a video on doing more complex stuff with hooks. So one more time, I'm going to walk you through what I did. I have my use state here, which contains the initial values for our state, being our to-do list. I have our handle submit function here, which takes in a to-do and spreads the previous values of the to-do list and adds a new to-do. I have handle delete to-do handler, which takes in an ID, filters our current list of to-dos for that by that ID, and then adds that to our state. We have a to-do input here, which we collect the state for our input. We have a handler here, which is invoked in our handle input change, which just passes the event.target.value into it and then updates that input value. And then we have a handle submit, which whenever this form is submitted, whenever we hit enter in the input, it's then preventing default on that form. We submit it to the parent, which is the app.js, and then we reset our input value to be an empty string. The to-do list gets those to-dos, maps them out to our to-do item. The to-do item renders a label. Sorry about that car alarm. It's been going off all morning. It's driving me nuts. And then we delete our to-do here, passing in the input ID or the ID of the to-do itself. And then that's our to-do application. So like I said, next video will get more complex. I just wanted to outline what hooks were and why they're beneficial and set up a little bit of logic using hooks. If you have any questions, reach out to me on Twitter. My handle will be below. And thanks for watching. I appreciate it.